Hi everyone, it's Niamh here. Welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be drawing some abstract faces as part of my 100-day project, and this is part of my 7 days of drawing different types of faces. So you can see one of my faces on the right hand side, which is still very sketchy and not very realistic, but it's certainly going to be more realistic than the one I'm doing today. So I'm just starting out in the background using some watercolor gouache paints in my background. So they're a little bit more chalky than normal watercolors. The colors are quite opaque for watercolors, so you can sort of layer them up on top of each other. These ones are from Jane Davenport. So you can get those from her website. So they're just nice bright colors. They sort of really appeal to me. I've just chucked in some colors in the background as I usually do, and now I'm doing some mark making. So I'm using the same colors that I've used in the background and just overlaying them. So using my paintbrush to create the shapes and the marks, and overlapping the shapes over the different pieces of color. So I'm not keeping them all in one place. They're sort of all getting mixed and matched, and different sizes, different shapes, and just being moved across the page. So you sort of got that flow across the page, which you can see with the crosses going up there, the plus signs. I really enjoy making marks with lots of different sized paintbrushes. It just makes it so easy when you're having to think about things that you don't really need to think. You're just using the shape of the brush to help you out. So you can sort of see really quickly that everything's put together. Now I do apologize, I did knock the camera, and the end of the video I think ends up being all done at this funny angle. So you do get to see most of what I'm doing, but I do apologize for the slight bump. I realized at the very end what I'd actually done. So once I've done all the paintwork, then I'm going in with my paint pens as I usually do, and just drying that off before I go. Now I was taking a little bit of a chance with this in the fact that I knew I was going to be painting over the top of this, and I've used a water reactive paint in my background. One of the good things about sort of those gouache paints though is if they are very dry in the background and you're not mucking around too much of putting the paint over the top, you're not going to move it all that far, but just be aware that you are working on top of a water soluble background, so it could make a bit of a difference. So with my Stabilo oil pencil, I'm just drawing in a really simple shape. Now the great thing about this little face is it is just really playing with the proportions, which is something I love with my magazine collage, and it's just so much fun to do. So I've got really big eyes, I've got a really long nose, I've got really wide thin lips that go out over the side of the face. And the reason this kind of works is most of the features are in the correct place. So the eyes are roughly where you would expect eyes to be, the nose is roughly where you expect noses to be, and the mouth is roughly where you expect the mouth to be. They are way bigger and they're slightly offset, but because they're kind of where they're supposed to be, our eyes recognize it as a face. So our brains are quite clever when it comes to stuff like this. I decided I'm going to have an alien-esque type person with lots of green paint, so I'm just layering up sort of from light to dark and putting a little bit of shading and shadowing in my eyelids and around the sides of my face. Then I'm going in with the contrasting color. So this is some of the neon pink, just to give a bit of shape to the page, and then a little bit of the neon yellow as well. So I do love playing with neons in this way, just for the fact that they kind of act like a little bit of a filter. They brighten up the colors underneath. They are semi-translucent, so you can still see some of that color coming up. So that's why I don't have a true sort of pink on the page. You've got those colors of the green coming up through, and it gives it almost a browny shadow tone, which is what I'm looking for. Instead of using my paint pen, I've actually gone in with white gesso for my eyes, the reason I did that is it's slightly more opaque, and because I was concerned about the water reactive paints underneath, I just wanted to make sure that I had a really good base of white so that I had eyes that kind of look like eyes on my page. And I'm going in with my acrylic paint to paint in the eyes, nice turquoise to sort of contrast with the blue. So you can sort of see it coming together. Now I'm going in with my black paint pen, and this is what's going to give sort of all the extra detail to the page, making sure you leave the catch-alls, the little white dots in your eyes to make it sort of all blend together a little bit. Once I'd finished fiddling around with this, then what colour body am I going to do? So I just chucked the purple over the top, because purple and green do go pretty well together. And it was just, you know, it was there, so I chose it. Finally, I'm going in with a pencil and just adding some additional shading to the piece of work. So this sort of adds a little bit of texture. You can see I'm bringing up some of the purple onto the face as well to add some of that sort of reflection from the body onto the face. And now I'm going in with my black Stabilo oil pencil to add in sort of those lines and the detail and the darkness to the page. So this sort of helps to define where the shape is and to sort of bring it all together. Also, to make it additionally creepy, I've decided to put in some teeth. Teeth are always an interesting thing to do on a figure, because it really is it can creep people out a lot, so just be careful with it, and you know, if you like that look, that's great. If you don't, just leave it out. So as I do with a lot of these things, I've sort of put in the shading with my paints first, and then I'm going over with the pencil. I find it's just so much fun to do because you get all these additional bits and pieces. However, you can see where I've just scraped the paint off the top there. You do need to be a little bit careful, because obviously layered paint on top of gouache on top, and then putting pencil on top, it doesn't necessarily have something to sink into or bind into, so it is sitting quite on the top of the background, and it means if you're a little bit rough and heavy-handed like I am sometimes, you can remove some of the paint. So I just filled that in with paint pen and put some pattern making over the top, lines over the top, not lines, sorry, dots, to sort of fill it in, a bit like freckles on it, and it all worked out. So you know, there's no right or wrong, especially with something like this, because it's supposed to look quirky, it's supposed to look odd, and that's what sort of adds to the quirk of it. Once I'd finished drawing out my face, then I decided I wanted to put a quote on my page. So I'm busy on my phone here trying to find a quote. You can see I've brought up all my different quotes there, and then I'm using quite long, thin strokes for writing out my quote, and I really like this one. That's enough today for today. I really felt that. Especially with, you know, the one big bulging eye and the big lips and the worried look on the face. It sort of summed it up beautifully. So I'm just going in with my thicker paint pen over the top to make it really stand out from the background, and then I will put in a drop shadow just again to help push it out from the background and make it all come together. One of the things I do find when I'm using paint pen though is to dry it off as I'm working on it, because I am very good at putting my hand exactly into the wet spot and then spreading that all over my page. So just be aware, paint pens do dry quite quickly, but if you're impatient like me, you may need to have a little bit of extra support to help get it dry. You can also see my white pen is dying slightly, so I'm having to prime it as I go along. And I don't know if anyone else does this, but the front of my Dilutions book is, or that little strip down the side, the little margin, is just where I prime my pens every time. Which is why it looks a bit ridiculous. So here's a close-up of the page. You can see the detail and the pencil textures, how the eyes have been coloured in. how the lips have got the shadows on it, and then the background, how it all comes together. So I hope you have a go at exploring using some different shapes on your faces and trying different color schemes just to practice shading and so on. It's lots of fun, and it just makes it exciting to play with faces. Until next time, bye for now.